you would never have expected to bear the brunt of, being called out by the president of the United States. Here it is, I get targeted in writing, accompanied by Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, the feeling of powerlessness at times.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the Midas Touch Network. My guest today is special. I'll introduce Mark Zaid in a second, but I want to preface our conversation by cautioning you. Don't let Mark's affability, his sense of humor, diminish the seriousness of what he's going through. While the Trump regime has launched an all-out assault on American institutions and American democracy, there are a handful of individuals personally called out by Trump himself who are named enemies of the regime. We know the Bidens are on the list. Lately, the regime is focused on the Obamas as a pathetic attempt at distraction, and Mark Zaid is in that company for the simple reason that as a lawyer, he dared to represent Trump insiders who spoke out against the regime. I had Mark on the show a few months ago. We both thought things were bad then. They have gotten immeasurably worse, and Mark is still at the center of that storm, braving intimidation tactics up to and including death threats. That is how bad things are in America today. But thank God we still have people like Mark who believe enough in democracy and the rule of law to risk their lives for it. Here's our conversation. Don't miss this one. Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. I'm joined today by Mark Zaid, one of the nation's leading national security attorneys who has represented whistleblowers from the intelligence community, from the DOD, and that has put him squarely in the crosshairs of the Trump administration. Mark, the last time we talked, I think I opened by asking you, did you ever expect it to get this bad? And I feel like I have to ask you that again because it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Are you still surprised at the excesses of the Trump regime and just how lawless they have become? Even in just the last few months, we thought it was bad a few months ago. It's almost unbelievable these days.
No, hey, well, first, it's great to be back. Thanks, Ken. No, every day is worse than the one before. Yeah. The first administration I almost yearned for back at this time, if I had a choice between first and second, because we had professionals in place in the first administration. You had Republican conservatives who were in power in the last, Bush administration, who come back. This is generally how it's been in DC with this revolving door. Now, though, we're talking cult maggots, if I could say the term, MAGA cultists. That's probably
sure. Maggots is fine. Maggot. I don't think that's going to offend anyone here.
MAGA cultists, and it has gotten worse because the rule of law is what's being attacked and undermined. You have had a blending of independent agencies coupled with the attached to the White House, more precisely to the president of the United States. We talk often of authoritarianism. I throw a different term into the mix because I've adopted it after having read about it, patrimonialism, which is a century-old term related to authoritarianism, but it's about ensuring chaos and getting rid of the oversight authorities and allowing, therefore, the leadership to be more of a king than as a president. We've obviously never seen anything like that before. I'll end on the high note of I don't even think we're even close to hitting rock bottom.
Not much of a high note, but I do appreciate your assessment about the engineered incompetence of this administration. I mean, some of it's accidental. It's what happens when you place the most incompetent people in the most important positions. But some of it is by design. And you see this in every totalitarian regime throughout history. If the king surrounds himself with people utterly dependent upon the power structure that he controls, then his position is safeguarded. And I think you see that with everybody close to the president. They are utterly incompetent, incapable, powerless without him. And that's the way he wants it, even if they can't do their jobs.
Yeah, again, different from the first administration.
Right.
I represented two of his former secretaries of defense, one of his national security advisors. These were people who were long-term government officials who went through the military, rised up in the ranks, to senior leadership, national security advisors, things like that, of positions that they might have had different views than perhaps some of your listenership, but they were competent for sure, and they knew where the lines were. There weren't ethical violations. There were differences of opinion as far as what policies might be, which you always see in every administration. Now it's different. Now we're talking about personal financial benefits. We're talking about putting 22-year-olds in charge of counterterrorism operations at the Department of Homeland Security, a 29-year-old being put in charge of the Office of Special Counsel who has ties to right-wing extremists. We have folks who would never, ever be nominated, much less thought about being confirmed, were it not for how weak in our lifetime the weakest Congress has ever been.
Hey, it's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break to say thank you to everyone who's been following and supporting this show and this channel. None of it happens without you. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my Substack page, I'd really appreciate the follow. It's a great way to make sure you never miss an episode. It's free to sign up. And if you're able to pitch in a few bucks, every dollar goes back into the show. Just search for The Ken Harbaugh Show on Substack or click the link below. Thanks. Are you surprised? I guess I'm going to ask you this question in a lot of different domains. Are you surprised that we haven't paid the price yet, in that we've got an intelligence establishment that is making up stories about supposedly treasonous former president? We've got a Department of Defense that is eradicating woke and polygraphing would-be disloyal staffers. We've got the most important departments of our government doing everything but their jobs. And we haven't, it doesn't feel like, paid the price yet in terms of threats to this country, but that's got to be coming. I mean, China must be rubbing its hands in glee, right, at the exposure of the U.S. right now. I worry about what we're not seeing and the damage being done to American interests because of the Tulsi Gabbards and the Pete Hegseths and the J.D. Vances. I mean, go all the way up the chain, not abiding their most fundamental responsibility to support and defend the Constitution and the American people.
The long-term exploitation that our adversaries will be able to engage in is what is certainly paramount and of the gravest danger. You know, yes, we're not seeing it yet internally, right? We're not seeing that necessarily crime spikes, or we're not hearing of industrial espionage or economic espionage. We're not, most of us, other than, I mean, I've already personally felt certainly the vindication, or the vindictiveness, I should say, the retaliation, but the majority of the United States hasn't felt the impact. And that's and good in some ways, but it's unfortunate because we're not going to see real change to bring us back to a moderation of politics for both sides. We need, as far as I'm concerned, I don't want the extremists on either side. A little bit left is fine, a little bit right is fine, and the pendulum swings back and forth. That's what elections and democracy is all about. And working together is what it's all about. But to see what's happening now, the firing, if not dismantling, obviously, of the Agency for International Development, USAID, USAGM, the global media, this is who Voice of America, all these other media operations that we use not to present propaganda to foreign countries as to why we're such a great America, but to bring moderate and democracy to their countries, the truth as to how things were reported. I mean, I would give interviews to Voice of America, which would be critical of the United States government. And that's what they would be reporting outside of the U.S., because they were showing to other countries what it's like to live in a democracy where you can speak out against your leadership and not be concerned of any type of retaliation. The amount of damage we've seen to the State Department with the culling of career foreign service officers, of which you cannot buy that experience. You have to earn that experience. Or the number of Justice Department lawyers who have left, people who have worked through multiple administrations, Democratic and Republican, where it didn't make a difference who was in power because they were abiding by the rule of law. And while they might not have agreed with a particular policy, they were the lawyers advocating and arguing the position. And there wasn't anything unethical about what they were doing. It was exactly what we as lawyers do. But those offices have been gutted. The purge of just routine civil servants. Wait till folks start not receiving their Medicaid, Medicare checks or their IRS refund checks. That's when we'll start feeling it in the heartland. Maybe then people will wake up and go, this might not have been the best course of action for our country.
But until then, most Americans, for now, are spectators to the evisceration of government programs, to the dismantling of America's credibility around the world, the willful dismantling of it. Can you relate to us what it feels like to be the target of the Trump regime? Because I don't think most Americans have felt that yet. They will when when their Medicaid benefits get slashed, or if you happen to look the wrong way in LA right now, you're the target of this regime. But that's not most Americans yet. You've been targeted by this regime. Can you share with us what that feels like when the full force of the American government comes down on you?
It's hard to describe in some ways because you would never have expected to bear the brunt of being called out by the president of the United States. I had already gone through some of it in his first administration. He said I should be sued for treason. Doesn't exist. He said I was a sleazeball or sleazebag. I always forget which one it was. One of those sleazy something. Hey, but I'm a lawyer, right? That kind of comes with the territory, right? But now here it is. I get targeted in writing, accompanied by names that maybe your listeners are familiar with: Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, Andrew Weissman, Norm Eisen, Lynn Cheney, Andrew Kinzinger, Adam Kinzinger, right? All these people who are prominent politicians, some lawyers. I'm the only one in there who's just a lawyer. I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I'm not in politics. So the biggest brunt that happens is all the death threats and the hate mail you get and the emails. Thankfully, you can kind of tune a lot of it out, but it still has an impact. But there is a degree, and I didn't experience this in the first administration as now I do in the second, the feeling of powerlessness at times. Right now, it's not fully there because thankfully the judiciary is functioning, right? We are challenging the executive branch and the judges are upholding the rule of law. Now, it doesn't mean all the decisions go our way. Sometimes it doesn't. But we see what and understand the rationale so that we understand that the system is at least working in those two directions. Congress pushed to the side. That they've taken themselves out of the picture. We can no longer go to them. But as a lawyer, right, my power is to go to the judiciary. When that stops, that's when I'm really going to be scared. When the constitutional crisis of the executive branch, the president of the United States refusing to obey a Supreme Court order, which I dare say I expect to happen during the course of this administration, that's when really we will all, we should feel the brunt of it. And that's where, frankly, we should be scared because that puts us on par with all the dictatorships, I can never say these words, which is why I've learned don't try. Authoritarianism, totalitarianism, right? There we go. These are all the ones we've learned about in school as kids, and we weren't them until now.
Well, I think that is absolutely coming. They have telegraphed as much. I mean, J.D. Vance, before he was even elected, was saying this is what the president needs to do. He needs to stare the Supreme Court down and say, enforce your own decisions.
Which you go. You asked
Invoking.
whether I was surprised. There's nothing that surprises me because they telegraphed and
Right.
vocally said this is what they plan to do.
That was part one of my conversation with Mark Zaid. Tune in for part two later this week, where we discuss the courts and whether they can still be relied upon to rein in executive overreach. See you then.